All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to be reading from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, continuing on with this saga. We're reading Appendix A. So we've already really followed Ramakrishna through his ministry and into his Mahasamadhi, his return to, or his dropping of the body, I guess is how you could say that, amongst other ways. He passed away. In Appendix A today, we're with Keshab at Dakshineshwar. Now, Keshab was the leader of, it says here in the first sentence actually, Saturday, January 1st, 1881. Keshab Chandra Sen, the leader of the Brahmo Samaj, was expected to visit Sri Ramakrishna at the temple garden at Dakshineshwar. Now, as many of you know, and just as a reminder, Keshab Sen, as the leader of the Brahmo Samaj, the Brahmo Samaj was sort of a reform movement within Hinduism, really to kind of, I guess, in a way, update it to make it more, I guess, appropriate or fit, cleaner or something in the modern world. I obviously am not a member of the Brahmo Samaj, and it's still around, but not in the prominence that it once was. Hi, come on in. He and Keshab were quite close, actually, and there's quite a few conversations in the rest of the book that he had with Keshab. He considered him a good friend. So he's expected to visit Sri Ramakrishna at the temple garden at Dakshineshwar. With the master were many Brahmo celebrities, Pratap and Trilokya, Jayagopal, and others. It was only a few days before the annual festival of the Brahmo Samaj, and the Brahmos were eagerly awaiting the arrival of their leader, who was to come by steamer. They were restless and talking rather noisily. Ram and Manomohan and several other devotees of the master were also there. At last, Keshab entered the master's room with 2 fruits and a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Touching the master's feet, he laid the offering at his side. Then he saluted Sri Ramakrishna with great reverence, bowing very low before him. Sri Ramakrishna returned in like manner his distinguished visitor's salutation. Then he laughingly began the conversation. Master, you, Keshab, want me, but your disciples don't. I was saying to them, let us be restless, then Govinda will come. To Keshab's disciples, see, here is your Govinda. Right, and so what he's really referring to here is that the Brahmo Samaj had an idea that God was only formless. And so any other form, like a Kali or a Krishna, that these were or a Shiva or any of these other deities, that God was formless only. And so they had that bias in them. And throughout his entire relationship with Keshab, the master, they poke fun at each other. They loved each other very much. And Ramakrishna was always trying to broaden their mind out to understand that God is with form and without form, that there is no distinguishing difference, just like this world and the divine are inseparable, that they're together, and that each one of us actually, not to the degree of power of an incarnation or of a deity, but all of us are manifestations of the divine. That same divine light shines through us all. The thing that distinguishes us, that makes us different, is that it shines through an ego, which prisms pure love into, conditioned love, which is the kind of love that we have in this world, or that we know in this world, a transactional love, which is the real cause of our misery, the real cause of our suffering, because everything's transactional, but our divine nature is not. And so we want to love equally, but we're imprisoned in our own ego. You see somebody get hurt, you want to run over and give them a hug, but, oh, they're a stranger, what would they say? I can't possibly do that. And so our fear, which comes through being small or considering ourselves separate from the whole, our fear takes control. And that was actually that's one of the first products of separating ourselves from God, or building a little, I see it as a white picket fence around ourselves within which we are in charge. God is out there, and that's fine, we'll deal with what that is later, but in my yard, I rule supreme. And that's egoism, to identify with your body and your mind, because in the truth, we're not. We are everywhere, ever free. And this is what realization is. It's to come to know this and to be inspired to live accordingly. So they're poking fun, which is why they're laughing as they're saying this with each other. And so Master tells them, oh, you, Keshav, you want me, but your disciples don't. I was saying to them, let us be restless, then Govinda will come, right? Govinda was a Krishna, you know. See, here is your Govinda. We have been showing signs of restlessness all this while to set the stage for your arrival. It isn't easy to have the vision of Govinda. You must have noticed in the Krishna Yatra that Narada enters Vrindavan and prays with great yearning, O Govinda, O my soul, O my life of my life. And then Krishna comes on the stage with the cowherd boys, followed by the gopis. No one can see God without that yearning. Well, Keshav, say something. They are eager to hear your words. Keshav, humbly with a smile, to open my lips here would be like trying to sell needles to a blacksmith. Master, smiling, but don't you know that the nature of devotees is like that of the hemp smokers? One hemp smoker says to another, please take a puff for yourself and then give me one. Everyone laughs. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they heard the music from the Nahabat in the temple garden. Master, to Keshav and the others, do you hear how melodious that music is? One player is producing only a monotone on his flute, while another is creating waves of melodies in different ragas and raginis. That is my attitude. Why should I produce only a monotone when I have an instrument with 7 holes? Why should I say nothing but I am he, I am he? I want to play various melodies on my instrument with 7 holes. Why should I say only Brahma, Brahma? I want to call on God through all the moods, through Shanta, Dashya, Shakya, Vatsalya, and Madhur. I want to make merry with God. I want to sport with God. Those different relationships with the divine. He says, I want to express God in all ways, which is what this world is, an expression of God in all ways. Look at the diversity. And this is how we learn that diversity and unity are not opposites, that in unity there is diversity. You know, that any movie that plays on the screen in the theater, the unity is found by the light in the projector and the white screen behind the movie, right? And so that one light is what animates all of us, and the nature of that one light is Satchit Ananda, pure love, pure wisdom, and our existence, our being. And so our attempt in this world is to reduce our egoism through discernment. Really, one method, just going inside and finding out how are you put together through meditation to find and understand the subtle aspects of yourself. They say we're not the body. And so you go inside and you're like, okay, in here, what is body? How do I sense body? How do I know body? And you get accustomed to that. And you come to realize that indeed the body communicates with you, has to talk to you, right? It has to tell you when it's sick. It has to tell you when it's tired. You start running up and down a flight of stairs, it tells you to stop, right? But if you were the body would not have to tell you something. You would inherently know it because it's you. And so you do the same with mind. You sit there, how does mind communicate with you? Right? And you watch mind, and you see how it arises, and you see how it's linked to the body, you see how it's linked to the senses, and how senses can invoke memories, and memories can invoke behaviors. And you begin to understand all of this, and you see that all of it is separate, that you can sit there and look at it, and study it, and watch it. And so we know that we're not the body and the mind, but what are we? And that is the most interesting of questions. Because the sages say that because you are outside of time, because you are outside you are infinite, right? That you can't be described. You can't be forced into the form of a subject-object-verb, which is what's necessary for a sentence. You can't be forced into time, space, and causation because you're outside of time. You can't be forced into past, present, and future because all you have ever experienced is a present. There is no past, there is no future. Those are constructs in your mind. And so when you start putting all of these things together, what you are becomes obvious, but you can only know it in that inner silence, right, before mind. So you try and silence the mind so it's not distracting you. before body. So you place your attention on the heart, they say, which is the abode of the divine, the shrine of the heart, where that which is the divine and that which is you are merged in that singular light of awareness that's sort of bleeding through a hole the size of a thumb, one of the Upanishads says, I think, something along those lines. And so all of this is self-evident. The only need for faith in it is to have enough belief that it could be true, so you start the practice, right? And as you start growing in that understanding, as you start to see these things yourself and understand them yourself, that becomes your motive. You can say that your faith grows, but really your knowledge grows, your understanding grows. And you begin to see that when you start to behave in a way that's not restricted by ego, you begin to find that your life becomes fulfilling. You find that your relationships become healthier. You find that you're freer, right? You're not always running around worried about what your hair looks like, what people are thinking about you, how old you are, how fat or thin you are, all of these things. They drop away, right? They drop away. And what happens is that divine love within you, because you've become aware of it, increases with your awareness, right? It's not that it grows or that it develops. It's simply that your awareness grows, your awareness develops, because that love within you has been a constant hum through your whole life. And what does the mind do with constant hums, right? Shuts them out, right? You turn on that fan in the kitchen stove. At first, ooh, that's terribly loud, but after you've got the lasagna going and you're cleaning the dishes, you forget all about it until someone turns that fan off, right? And then you're like, oh, where'd it go? Well, the love within you is that way. That bliss, that joy within you is that way, right? It exists in fullness within you, but you don't see it. Why? Because you don't dwell here with your attention. Your attention is here, watching the constant flow of unrepeating change. And that which does not change doesn't get your attention. That which is steady within you gets ignored by the mind, right? And so that's why we have to dive deep within ourselves and go into that silence. And we learn that silence, in this sense, silence within, is not an absence. It's not an emptiness. It's the infinite potential of your being. You come to see that all of your past has created this experience of your present, and that your future, all possibilities, come out of that same present. And so you understand that the silence of the present is the infinity of the divine, right? You come to know that this moment is the I am. It is the presence of God, right? That He is everywhere. And that love begins to grow in you and becomes big, basically overflows you, right? That's what samadhi is. It's to see this moment as it is. To not see it as your mind tells you that it is. As long as you think you're a body, you will see bodies, right? As long as you think yourself a man or a woman, you will see men and women. Whatever you think of yourself is what you project on others, because you can't know another's mind. And so you project your own on them, right? And this is where all of our troubles come from. Our racism, our sexism, our ageism, all of these things, because we identify ourselves in this particular way. And then naturally we're afraid of anything that doesn't match that pattern, right? And we react to that in ignorance, right? But the point is to transcend all of those things by knowing your real nature. And as you come to know your own nature, you'll come to know the nature of others. And when you see yourself as pure love, you assume pure love in others. You begin to live that way. And that fear diminishes. And in enlightenment, you know it to be true, and fear is gone. Right? The fear of death doesn't bother you because you are not the body. It's the body that is born and the body that dies. But this light of awareness is the eternal moment. Never disappears, never goes away. And as you know that, you grow. You become more and more like Jesus or Buddha or Rama, whichever ideal has reflected that love to you. So Ramakrishna goes on, he says, why should I say only Brahma, Brahma? I want to call on God as a lover, as a husband, or as a wife, as a child, as a brother or a sister, as my, all the 5 possibilities of how to let the ego, as it's diminishing, interact with the beloved. He says, I want to play them all. I want to make merry with God. I want to sport with God. Right? I want to have fun. I want to have fun with the beloved. This pure love shouldn't be about, stodgy buildings, unfriendly people, right? I want to have fun. I want to enjoy this. I want to see God everywhere. Keshab listened to these words with wonder in his eyes, and he said to the Brahmo devotees, I have never before heard such a wonderful and beautiful interpretation of jnana and bhakti. Right? Jnana and bhakti, these are two of the yogas, two of the paths to God. The path of jnana is the answer to the question, who am I? Right? And oddly enough, that question is not intended to be answered, according to the sages. That question, as you pursue it, dissolves the asker. Right? You dissolve into that oneness, into the love that is the divinity, that is God. And so as your ego thins, you become closer and closer and more aware of that oneness. We start out thinking we're separate, me and God's somewhere. I'm not sure where he is today. All right, it's like that for a while. He comes and goes. We think, oh, God has left me. I feel depressed, right? Not knowing that God has gone nowhere, your attention has left God. He has not gone anywhere, right? And you begin to get comfortable with that idea, and suddenly God is the whole and you're a part. Your idea changes. I'm a part of God. I'm an instrument of God, right? I'm the friend of God. I'm the husband of God. However you're working your devotion. And then when you reach the highest, there is no distinction. When the ego is gone, when the fence is torn down, you are the infinite universal mind, right? You are one without a second. And in that, there is no thought in your mind. The mind is silent. And what happens then? See, all thoughts are disturbances. They're waves in the mind. And they're caused by the thought of me and mine, a thought of individuality that came from being a body and being a mind, right? And when those waves begin to subside, the mind is silent. And in that, what happens, because thought and ego are created out of imbalance, created out of ignorance or partiality, there's always a hunger. There's always a need for something, right? But when you come to know that oneness, right, that need subsides. And what happens, what moves you then is not hunger or a grasping or a getting, but an inspiration from the divine nature, a thing that requires no thought, no independent thinking. You simply are true to your own nature, right? In Christianity, in the New Testament, Paul describes that. It's no longer I who live, but the Christ who lives in me, right? So we have touched that divinity, and it begins to manifest like a burning fire, and people around you can feel that heat, can experience that love, which is what the great sages are, and the avatars. An avatar or an incarnation like a Jesus is not a person in time, not a place, not a portion of history. An avatar is a hole through which God can be seen. A hole in what? A hole in egoism. So these avatars, these great names that we've remembered for thousands of years, whether it's a Jesus or a Buddha or a Rama or a Krishna, they're just names of holes through egoism, right? A singular hole, really, that just keeps coming again and again, so that through that individual we see what it is to be pure love, the closest proximity. They're kind of controversial in some level. There still has to be at least a seed or a particle of me and mine, otherwise you can't have a body, right? If you didn't know that body was yours. And so there's a touch of it in them, but that's it, just a touch. At a simple letting go, they can unite with the beloved again, right? But they hold that space so that you can see what it is that you are. I've never heard before such a wonderful and beautiful interpretation of jnana and bhakti. Oh, bhakti is devotion, right? The bhakti yoga path. Christianity is a great expression of bhakti yoga. Islam is an expression of bhakti yoga. Buddhism is an expression of jnana yoga, right? So all the world's traditions can be described within the Sanatana Dharma, this eternal religion, right? So there becomes only one religion with multiple paths, multiple traditions within it. And so in that we find our love and respect for one another. We don't let our egoism attach to our religion. That's what causes division. That's what causes fundamentalism. That's the things that are going on in the world right at this moment, right? Ego has aligned with religion, and we see the problem. We see the cause immediately. Keshab to the master, how long will you hide yourself in this way? I dare say people will be thronging here by and by in great crowds. Master, what are you talking of? I only eat and drink and sing God's name. I know nothing about gathering crowds. Hanuman once declared, I know nothing about the day of the week or the position of the moon and the stars in the sky. I simply meditate on Rama. Keshab, all right, sir. I shall gather the crowd, but they all must come to your place. Master, I am the dust of everybody's feet. If anyone is gracious enough to come here, he is welcome. Keshab, whatever you may say, sir, your advent cannot be in vain. In the meantime, the devotees had arranged a kirtan, a singing. Many of them had joined it. The party started at the Panchavati and moved toward the master's room. Hriday blew the horn. Gopidas played the drum, and 2 devotees played the cymbals. Sri Ramakrishna sang, O man, if you would live in bliss, repeat the Lord Hari's name. Then you will lead a life of joy and go to paradise and feed upon the fruit of moksha, which is freedom, forevermore. Such is the glory of his name. I give you the name of Hari, which Shiva, God of gods, repeats aloud with his 5 mouths. The master danced with the strength of a lion and went into samadhi. Right? Samadhi is that high state of God intoxication, where you're having only a singular thought of the divine presence. That is what the inspiration is, and that's what's driving the intensity of his dancing, because love itself is being expressed, and for him as an experiencer, love itself is all he is experiencing, right, in that state. He went into samadhi. Regaining consciousness of the outer world, he sat down in his room and began to talk with Keshab and the other devotees. Master, God can be realized through all paths. It is like you're coming to Dakshineshwar by carriage, or by boat, or by steamer, or on foot. You have chosen the way according to your convenience and taste, but the destination is the same. Some of you have arrived earlier than others, but all have arrived. The more you rid yourself of upadhis, these are those waves in the mind, those things, the nearer you will feel the presence of God. Rainwater never collects on a high mound, it collects only on low land. Similarly, the water of God's grace cannot remain on the high mound of egotism. Before God, one should feel lowly and poor. One should be extremely watchful. Even clothes create vanity. I notice that even a man suffering from an enlarged spleen sings Nidhu Babu's light songs when he is dressed up in a black bordered cloth. Right? So this idea here that God, one should feel lowly and poor, don't misinterpret that. It doesn't mean self-hatred and pounding yourself and feeling badly about yourself, right? It's knowing that ego self is not your highest. It's not your best outfit, right? And so you let go of that egoism by understanding its place, kind of putting it separate from you. You are not the ego. You're not the body. You're not the mind. So that's the lower state of yourself, right? But somehow we can't get out of it. We suffer for it. We have a fight with our best friend, and all we want to do is apologize and have our friend back. But the ego in us says, no, he started, he should apologize to me. I'm not going to apologize to him. So you sit there being sad and angry, unable to fix your own suffering, right? Because your ego shuts you down. And so we see that when we act that way, that's the lower state, and that is what he's talking about. When you are in that ego state, understand this is not who you are, right? Break your identity with that. Move your idea of self from here to here, right? And sit in peace, not in the clamor of the mind, but in the peace of pure love, right? And that's what he's saying. You can't experience God's grace, not that it's not there. The Divine Mother has a great way of explaining this. She says, the grace of God is easily attained, but the grace of one's own mind is difficult indeed. All right? So you can say, sorry, I'm sorry for having had a fight with my friend. And God's like, I understand. It's ignorance. You didn't know better. Now you do. go and don't do it again, all right? And so you go away and, boy, you try. You try real hard sometimes not to do it again. But ego is a freight train, right? You know, we've got, however old you are, that's how many years your ego has been running in the same direction. So it's not something that stops overnight, right? And so when some of the great sages, oh, you don't have to practice, you don't have to go to church, you don't have to do anything like that, you are that. You know, well, yes, you are that, but you've got 61 years, or I've got 61 years behind me of not knowing that. And that is hard to do in an instant, right? And so we practice. We sit and we pray, and we sit and we meditate, right? And do all of the things that we can do to touch that divine light and to respond accordingly in that. One should be extremely watchful. Even clothes create vanity, right? So this watchfulness we call discernment. That's you going inside, you know, and finding out, okay, I want to go out and party with my friends this weekend, right? And you've been wanting it all week. Why? Because your mind keeps replaying just the pleasant parts of that you had fun last week, right? It doesn't let you think of how long you had to work in order to pay for all of those drinks that night, right? It doesn't tell you about how uncomfortable you were when you first walked into the place and, you know, nobody knows you and all that discomfort. It doesn't let you know about the Saturday morning when you woke up with that pounding headache and you couldn't do anything until 11 o'clock on your only day off, you know. Like that, it won't play those things back if you're not watchful, right? It just plays back the pretty parts. And that's how we get tricked into repeating these behaviors over and over and over and over again. You know, you forget that when you woke up on Saturday morning, you pounded your head and you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again. And then Friday, you're out doing it again, right? So he's saying, be watchful. Break this cycle within you. Understand the nature of your desires, right? All of your desires, if you watch very carefully and look at them from all angles, are a desire to return to your divine nature, right? Your love of money is a love of self-actuation, you know, to be free, omnipresent, like God, right? All of your quest for relationships is a quest for oneness with each other. All of your love of you know, all of the drinking or whatnot, all of those are you trying to recapture that inner bliss of your being, right? Because we don't know who we are. We try and live a life, right, trying to find happiness without even knowing what we are inside. And so we try all manner of things because from your youth up, people are asking you, what are you going to be when you grow up, right? Nobody's telling you what you are right now. Who are you? What's your nature? And so to live in accordance with your nature is to find a fulfilling life, however you present that, however it's expressed in this world. To know that you're pure love, act accordingly. Your life, whatever you're doing, will become fulfilling. Anything done with love is fulfilling. Anything done with wisdom frees you, takes you toward light, takes you toward freedom. Anything you do in this moment, in this existence, with that knowledge will set you free. You won't be subject to this ego that has sometimes turned us into beasts. So he says, you know, even clothes create vanity. So when you put them on, when you dress up in a certain way and you look in the mirror, what is it that you're loving, right? What is it you're trying to do or get from that, right? And is that valid? Does it give it to you? Have you been glad with what it drew to you? Right? I notice that even a man suffering from an enlarged spleen sings Nidhu Babu's light songs when he is dressed up in a black bordered cloth. Right? So even someone suffering with sickness, if he dresses up, he can feel grand about himself, you know. But it's not real. Right? It won't sustain you. Right? That's why God says, if you're looking for freedom, look only within. Why? Because only within, with that divine light of wisdom and love, are things actually changed in you. Right? That is the light that brings about a healing. What is the healing of? Your ignorance about what you are and who you are. If you go outside of yourself into the world of senses, the best you get is a distraction, right? all that fun on Friday night. It was fun. You forgot all about your troubles. You forgot you couldn't pay rent. You forgot that someone wrecked your car. You're out there just having a good old time. But when that night's over, the world, if you take refuge in the world, always sets you right back down in front of your troubles. Right? And that's how addiction happens. Because that distraction doesn't last longer than the bottom of the glass, right? And so we're placed once again into our situation. And if we don't know what to do about it, we just keep distracting ourselves in as many ways as we can, right? I remember my early days, man, I had a distraction at every night of the week. I never, ever wanted to be alone. I always wanted to be entertained, right? And when you get layers and layers and layers of that within yourself, the journey back to yourself will take you some time, some undoing, because you have to go back and look inside and discern, being watchful, to see all of these distractions that you're living in order to save you from the hurt of not knowing what to do and who you are and how to solve it. Right? And so little by little, we undo the delusion, we undo the distraction, we undo the pain that's causing it, and we return to our nature through the grace of God, through the grace of our own mind. We find that freedom. He says, and then there are men who spout English whenever they put on high boots, right? So remember, they're being occupied by the British at this point, right? And so you've got these Indian guys that are native to that country and putting on the high boots and then, stomping around, or we can see examples of it here with put on a what do they call it, tactile outfit, or all that armor and whatnot, and put a certain stamp on your chest, and suddenly you can walk around and say what you want and do what you want, right? All of these false ideas. And when an unfit person puts on an ochre cloth, right, which is the cloth of a mendicant or a renunciate. When an unfit person puts on an ochre cloth, he becomes vain, right? And the slightest sign of indifference to him arouses his anger and his pique, right? So you put on a cloth like this, and suddenly people are taking the dust of your feet, and you get the best chair at the dinner table, and you get to go through the line first. All the things that make us terribly uncomfortable, all right? You're treated like that, and if you don't understand that the people are offering all of that niceness to the ideal that's represented by your color, not by who you are and what you are, but what you represent to them, right? That renunciation. If you don't understand that, which is what it means to be an unfit person, then you become proud. And then if somebody doesn't take the dust of your feet, we're like, excuse me, my feet. God cannot be seen without the yearning of heart. And this yearning is impossible unless one has finished with the experiences of life, right? You have to long for the divine. Well, how do you long for the divine? By understanding that that is all you have ever yearned for, right? That is why I say when you discern and you look at all of your desires and see that all of them represent a reflection of your divine nature, then you realize it's not the objects, it's not the things out there that I'm looking for, it's what they reflect to me, right? When you have your lover and you're in their presence, where do you feel the love? It's in you. Where is it coming from? Well, your delusion will say, oh, it's coming from that person. How's that person's love coming into you, right? And if it was coming from that person, wouldn't everybody who was in the room with that person feel it also, right? It comes from within you. A divine quality, a quality of your nature that you like, is being reflected back to you. And so you begin to understand this. And when you understand this about all of your desires, then all of those desires coalesce into a single desire. Not for a multitude of objects and experiences and peoples and places, but to that divinity from which all of that love is experienced, from within you. And you come to know the biggest secret of life, that all the joy you ever thought you got from the objects outside actually came from within you. And you can have it any time simply by placing your attention of self within the shrine of your heart, in the presence of that divine energy, that divine isness. Those who live surrounded by lust and greed have not yet come to the end of their experiences, They do not yearn for God. When I lived at Karmarpakor, Hriday's son, a child of 4 or 5 years old, used to spend the whole day with me. He played with his toys and almost forgot everything else. But no sooner did evening come than he would say, "I want to go to my mother." I would try to cajole him in various ways, and he would say, "Here, I'll give you a pigeon." But he wouldn't be consoled with such things. He would weep and begin to cry, "I want to go to my mother." He didn't enjoy playing anymore. I myself wept to see his state. One should cry for God that way, like a child. That is what it means to be restless for God. One doesn't enjoy the play or food any longer. After one's experiences of the world are over, one feels this restlessness and weeps for God, for the beloved. The devotees sat in silence, listening to the Master's words. When evening came, a lamp was lighted in the room. Preparations were being made for feeding Keshab and the devotees. Keshab with a smile. "What? Puffed rice again today?" the master smiling. "Oh, Hriday knows." The devotees were served first with puffed rice and then with luchi and curries on leaf plates. All enjoyed the meal very much. It was about 10 o'clock when the supper was over. The master went to the Panchavati with Keshab and the devotees. The Panchavati is a little grove where, I don't remember the types of 5 trees, but somehow it's auspicious to have these 5 trees growing and you meditate in the middle of them. And so at this temple, on these temple grounds where Ramakrishna lived, he had planted one of these Panchavati areas. And if you go there today, you can still see the area where it was at, where he did his practices. And so this is where he's going. He went to the Panchavati with Keshab and the devotees, the master to Keshab and the others. One can very well live in the world after realizing God. Why don't you first touch the granny and then play hide and seek? Right? What he's thinking, touch the granny means, oli income free, you go touch, in their hide and seek, you have to come out of hiding and run and touch a post in order to be out of the game. And then he says, well, why run and hide? Why do it that way? Go and touch the granny first, and then you don't have to worry about being chased, right, in the world. And so he says, in this world, find yourself first, and then you don't have to be worried by being pulled in and fooled by all of these things going on around you. You can see them as they are. You can see God in them. You can see the beloved in them, right? You don't need anything outside of yourself for your happiness, for your joy, for your bliss. After attaining God, a devotee becomes unattached to the world, right? Attachment is those, you're attached to something when you're mad when somebody takes it away, right? When you're mad or hurt that somebody took it away, that's an attachment. And we don't want that. Why? Because it's not necessary. We attach to those things because we think we need them, right? We've identified with them. And so pull that identity back, right? So that your power of attachment is matched by your power of detachment, right? Because we need attachment. The ideal is not detachment, right? That's a bit too stoic. And so the ideal is to have a perfect balance between the two. Why? Because for somebody to know that you love them, you have to attach to them a bit. You have to sit down to them and hold their hand and, weep with them, feel their feelings, understand their heart. But when it's time to get up and go, it's time to detach. It shouldn't destroy the rest of your day. You get up and you go, right? Because you were with them sharing oneness, but that oneness doesn't disappear when they're not there, right? Because you know that the love you feel for them, you take with you. It's within you. That's the magic of dealing with grief, actually, as a side note. If you know that a person you love is the love you feel for them, then when they pass away, when you think of them, that love arises again within you. You feel it. And so you can sit and enjoy their presence. You can sit and enjoy and remember the things that you did and the things and the times that you were together and all of that. But if you insist that they were a body, right, and that they were necessary for this feeling to be there, then you will always be sad. You won't be able to celebrate the memory. The memory will always bring sadness. Right? So this is the reason that we practice. This is the reason it's important to know who we are, so that we're not destroyed by this world. Right? We're inspired by it. We're lifted up by it, filled in it. After attaining God, a devotee becomes unattached to the world. He lives like a mudfish. The mudfish keeps its body unstained, even though it lives in mud. About 11 o'clock, the Brahmos became eager to go home. Pratap said, "It would be nice if we could spend the night here." Master to Keshab, "Well, why not stay here tonight?" Keshab smiling, "No, I have business to attend to. I must go." Master, "Oh, why must you, my dear sir? Can't you sleep without your fish basket?" Here's the story. Once a fishwife was a guest in a gardener's house. She was asked to sleep in a room full of flowers, but she couldn't get any sleep there. Everyone laughs. She was restless and began to fidget about. The gardener called to her, "Hello, hey, why aren't you sleeping?" "Oh, I don't know," said the fishwife. "There's all these flowers here. The smell keeps me awake. Can't you bring me my fish basket?" She sprinkled a little water in the basket, and when she smelled the fish, she fell fast asleep. All right, and so this is just to talk about we desire and think that we need the things that we've attached to, even though they're not what they seem to be, right? It's just the smell of fish. There's no safety there, there's no comfort there, right? It's all imagined through attachments. Keshab took a few of the flowers that he had offered at Sri Ramakrishna's feet. On his arrival, he and his Brahmo devotees cried out as they saluted the master. Saluting the master would mean that taking the dust of the feet. You know, it can be a simple thing of just reaching down and taking the dust, or it can be a real demonstration, you know, where the forehead, the chest, and the toes have to touch the floor, and you lay your hands out on the person's feet and then bring it up over your head. And you might do that 3 times. It does depend on all kinds of styles. But this is whenever they say saluting, I say that because I grew up in the military. My dad was in the Air Force. And I literally, in my first year in the monastery, and still I do it sometimes as a joke, I literally thought that you saluted. You salute, so I would go around. Nobody else was doing it, so I got an idea that maybe that wasn't it. So he and his devotees cried out as they saluted the master, "Hail Navavidham!" Thus they bade him adieu. One day, during the rainy season of 1881, Sri Ramakrishna and a number of devotees visited Surendra's house. It was about dusk. The master entered the drawing room on the 2nd floor where several of Surendra's neighbors had already gathered. Keshab had also been invited but could not come. Trilokya and a few of the Brahmo devotees were present. A mat covered with a white sheet was spread on the floor, and on it had been placed a beautiful carpet with a cushion. Surendra requested the master to sit on the carpet, but Sri Ramakrishna would not listen to him and sat on the mat next to Mahendra Goswami, one of the Surendra's neighbors. Right? We're going to stop there because it's 5:45. But just in explanation here, he wouldn't sit on that mat because in his culture, only wealthy people or rajasic people who, just thought something of themselves, would sit and lean against a bolster like that. And so he wanted to sit on the mat and be independent of that, not to have, just like clothing can make you proud, the bolster could make him feel rajasic. And he didn't want that experience. So always watching, always making sure he's in integrity with his divine nature, right? That constant awareness of the effect of the world on us if we're not discerning. Right? All right, let me share a few of our announcements with you. Oh, I'm speaking tomorrow morning here on Enjoying Life, the Secret Surprise. This week, on Wednesday at 5 p.m., there's a class by Pravajaka Krishna Prana on Swami Trigunatitananda, reading on a book of his life. And on the 18th, is that next week? Yeah, next Saturday, we won't be doing this class, but at the same bat time, same bat channel, Swami Sarvadevananda is going to be teaching from the Bhagavad Gita, and he is our head Swami. He's actually runs the Hollywood Center down in LA, and he's in charge of, gosh, I don't know, last time I counted it's something like 11 sub-centers or something. So we are one of those sub-centers. All right. There's a note here for anybody who's interested in the annual members meeting, Saturday at 10 a.m. via Zoom. And you can get that information if you're actually interested in that or if you have an obligation to be there. That's next Saturday at 10 a.m. A week from next Saturday. Oh, on the 25th, right, I'm sorry. All right, and I always like to remind people, this place is yours. You know, it came because of devotion. It was built by people who loved the divine and wanted a place to think about it and to develop it. So always feel free to be here. It's open from 6:30 in the morning until 7 p.m. at night. You're always welcome to come in and sit and have some time with just you and your ideal. This place does not limit itself to any one ideal. So you can come here to be a better Christian, you can come here to be a better Buddhist, you can come here to be a better person, you can come here to find yourself in any way or path that you are following. Jai Thakur, Jai Ma, Jai Swamiji.